Video, record videos with Debut Screen Recorder is in playlists, how to record video tutorials, and how to make home videos. The video shows how to use Debut Screen Recorder from NCH software. Debut records all or a portion of your computer screen and optionally records sounds from computer programs as well as your narration. This is a Tom's Tech Notes video. There are over 200 computer help and hobby videos on my channel page. If the video you are watching is part of a series, you should watch the series videos in order from the playlist on the channel page. To visit the channel page, you can type this URL into your browser. You can search for TOMSTDA and you should use the Google search. If they appear in your video window, you can click my name, Thomas Wallace, my photo, or a clickable link. To be notified when videos are added or updated, click the red subscribe button and request email notifications. Here's the Debut screen that appears when you open it. It's a little confusing because the preview is on. It's set to record the desktop, but the screen itself's in the middle of the desktop, so for the preview screen it shows the desktop with this screen in the middle of it. A way around that would be to use two monitors. Let's look at the options available on this screen. A device lets you record from another device plugged into your computer. A schedule, you can do automatic recordings. Let's look at the options. Video options, I'm just going to go over the ones you'd be likely to use. Screen capture, if you check here, it will remember the last thing that you had it set to capture. For instance, the primary desktop, the secondary desktop, or a rectangle area within the desktop. It would remember that, and then when you loaded it next time, it would set up for the same recording area. It's a good option to use. I don't change anything else on this screen. Let's go back to the options screen again. Audio, check here if you want to record from the microphone. There is a quirk in Debut, at least applies to USB microphones. Whenever you're going to record with Debut and use a USB microphone, you need to open the options, you need to uncheck and then recheck the microphone box on this screen. Otherwise, the microphone may not be recognized by Debut. Check here if you want to record from the system sound, and you can check them both. And if you do, you can adjust the relative levels. Check here if you want a click to record every time you click a mouse. I don't usually use that one. On the microphone, it shows the microphone that is actually selected. System Mixer opens the Windows Sound window, and that lets you access the microphone that you're using. Make sure that it's working, which you can see that it is from the fact that the volume meter changes when I'm speaking. You can check the recording levels here by double checking this, then click levels. I recommend you set it at 100. Elsewhere in some other videos I show you how I recommend you set up your actual recording levels for microphones that you're going to be using when editing. Here are some output options. This is where Debut saves its recorded video files. I've created a folder called Debut on the desktop to save the recordings. You can browse and create another folder if you want. Output file name. It's too troublesome to have it prompt for a name every time you start recording. I don't do that. If you do this one, the default name here is actually untitled followed by a number that increments automatically. I have changed it to the word Debut. You can change it to anything you want. If you leave that auto number in though, it'll number it as shown in the example, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And you can reset it here. I recommend you reset it after you've deleted the files in the folder. Let's just go to the next one, hotkeys. These are the hotkeys, and you will find it useful to be able to stop Debut by pressing Control F10. I generally set the option to minimize Debut when it's recording and then use the Control F10 to stop recording since the window for Debut is no longer visible. If you want to take a snapshot of the screen, Control F12 will do that. Record, you can limit the maximum recording time, and you actually should, Because what happens if you get called away from the computer when you started a recording and you forget about it? It'll use up a lot of storage. I suggest a limit of 10 minutes or so. You need to follow the format shown in the text line there, and there is a typo on the video where I've entered 10 hours instead of 10 minutes. Some recording time is reached, I'll just tell it to stop. You can tell it to just close the file, create another file, and keep going. But if you do this, it doesn't prompt you, it just keeps going. So I recommend you don't do that. Minimize debut window before starting screen capture. I do minimize it, and I don't minimize it to the system tray, which means it minimizes to the taskbar. And then you click on the taskbar if you want to open it again from while it's running. But again, I would use the hotkeys. You might want to write down what they are so you can remember them. Options for the cursor. You can hide the cursor so it doesn't record at all. You can show it, or you can show it and highlight it various ways. Snapshots. This just tells Debut where to put the snapshots when you take them. You can put them in a different folder than you put videos in, but I recommend you put them in the same folder so you don't have as much of a hassle finding them. The options for snapshots are very similar to those for recordings, so I won't go over them again here. Snapshot type, I normally use JPG, and I normally use the regular quality, which is the default. And that's all for the options. Let's go back to the main screen here. I'm not going to go into these. Let's go over the ones at the bottom. You can set the format of the video file, and I recommend MP4. There are some other options available. MP4 is kind of a good all-around format, and YouTube likes it. I wouldn't fiddle with the encoder options or the video options. You might want to, on MP4, make sure it's set to H.264, because again, that's what YouTube likes. I believe that's the default for quality. I wouldn't change any of the numbers on this screen unless you really know what you're doing. Audio, I left this at the default. Let's look at the command line at the top of the window. This file menu has a record option to start Debut recording. And if you do start it, you can pause and stop it from this. You'd have to have it on probably a separate screen and not minimize it if you wanted to use this to be able to access this menu while it was running. You can do a snapshot. Whatever the recording area is, you can take a snapshot of it. You can schedule recording at a future time. You can open the folder that has the recordings in it. You can register the software if you're using the free version, the personal free version. And you can exit the program. So let's look at the screen capture options. We'll come back to the select desktop rectangle to capture. That's one of the more complicated ones. Capture primary monitor. It'll record everything that happens on the primary monitor. That's assuming you were using 2 monitors. Capture secondary monitor. It would capture the other monitor. Capture the whole desktop. It'll capture them together, side by side, the primary and secondary monitors. Follow the mouse cursor. I don't use that option. Help, of course, provides help for Debut. Now let's go back and look at the screen capture option, select desktop rectangle. You can get that option by selecting it here or by clicking this box on the main window, and you get exactly the same option either way. There are 3 choices. This will just record both screens as I just did. If you click that and select, then when you record it, it records both the monitors combined. If you click this one, then hover the mouse over open windows until the selection is what you want it to be. Click once, then click select to finalize it. Then when you record, it'll only record this part of the window that was highlighted from that option. So I'll record that. This is the Debut recording of the selected window. The last one I'll demonstrate is this one, which is the draw the rectangle option. So when I click that one, it waits for me to draw a rectangle, Let's just draw a rectangle that overlaps this screen slightly. So that's the rectangle that I've drawn. Now notice, it gives the width and height there of the rectangle I just drew, and you can adjust those numbers by dragging the corners or sides of the rectangle. You can also move the rectangle by clicking in the middle of it and dragging. You can use that to guarantee that your rectangle has a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is the one YouTube prefers, so that you don't get black borders around your pictures. Drag the edges of the drawn rectangle to get the 16:9 aspect ratio for YouTube. To change the width, drag the sides of the rectangle. The width is the height divided by 9 times 16. To change the height, drag the top or bottom of the rectangle. The height is the width divided by 16 times 9. If you select the option to load the same selection each time you start Debut, you can set a 16:9 aspect ratio rectangle somewhere on your screen. Then that will appear the next time you start Debut, and you can move it wherever you want it. I should mention that Screen Recorder, which is part of PowerDirector Video Editor, has a much better way to ensure that your recording areas are a 16:9 aspect ratio. Screen Recorder is part of PowerDirector Video Editor, which is my recommended editor. For a complete description of Screen Recorder, see video Record Videos with Screen Recorder in my playlist How to Record Video Tutorials. That's the end of this video. Once again, here are several ways to visit the Tom's Tech Notes channel page.